welcome everyone. And Mark, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So when we talk about emerging innovation, certainly blockchain is a word that seems to come up in a part of every conversation lately. And it's the basis of what we're going to discuss in these next 15 minutes. But let me start with some background about Coras. Mark, that's the company you founded in 2015, correct?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay, so you're based in Dublin, Ireland, a global distribution platform that enables travel and other e-commerce brands to sell tickets for events and activities on their websites. And I know some of the companies you work with are Ryanair and Japanese online retailer Rakuten that use your API to sell tickets for major sporting events, theater shows, concerts, and attractions such as the London Eye. Do I have that generally correct?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Single API for the world's events and activities. Yeah.
Perfect. So I know it was through your work developing Coras that you came up with this idea to reinvent loyalty based on the idea that in the future, every brand would have its own token that would serve as a blockchain-based token that would serve as its form of loyalty currency. Before we get into more details about that idea and how it would work, can you tell us briefly, what do you view as some of the problems with existing loyalty schemes?
Well, I suppose, like, as someone who, I suppose, pre-pandemic was on a plane sort of two to four times a week, you know, from a consumer point of view, we think there's a number of issues. You know, lack of interoperability, you know, so points earned in one program can't be spent on another. So reducing customer choice of what they can redeem their points for. There's no transferability from one points holder to another. Points tend to expire on a periodic basis, depending on the partner, you know, usually leading to these sort of crazed consumer efforts to maintain a particular program status. And you know, from both the issuer and the customer point of view, the earning and redemption of points is quite a manual process with like significant resources required. And that locks out brands who might want to run a loyalty program, but don't have the resources to do it. And also loyalty schemes sit as a liability on the balance sheet of the issuer. So, you know, there's definitely issues at the consumer side and obviously on the issuer side as well.
Okay, so help us understand how a blockchain-based, or what's known as DeFi, that's decentralized finance, token can address these limitations.
Sure, yeah, so there's a token standard in DeFi called ERC20. And so they all basically run off the same sort of back-end infrastructure. And so ERC20 tokens address these issues. So there is interoperability. So tokens earned in one program could be spent in another. There is transferability. Not only the tokens don't expire, but also have the possibility of increasing and of course decreasing in value. And there's increased automation for earning and redemption of tokens. So as the issuer, you don't have to go and like agree deals with how many points in one program can be spent in another partner program. As the consumer has, you know, can convert to their preferred token and choose where to spend.
Okay, can you walk us through an example of what this might look like, let's say for a travel brand, like a hotel company?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So, you know, the next big trend we think is sort of these Web2 brands evolving their businesses to Web3. So you're seeing it with Kickstarter last week, you know, talking about building an open source protocol for crowdfunding, or last month, you know, Starbucks exploring how to tokenize their rewards program for their 25 million members. You know, it's pretty interesting from where we're coming from. So the key is having a user experience that brands can get their customers into Web3 without having to say, this is blockchain or DeFi. So the consumers realize it's just a better version of a product they're already used to. Similar to, say, the transition of booking a product over the phone to being able to book it online. And loyalty is a product that consumers understand, why it's such a good entry point into Web3. So how this would work for a hotel company is they basically decide the exchange rate. So let's say one token for every dollar spent. The token allocations are sort of loosely referred to as, you know, tokenomics. So the consumer would book a hotel room as normal, get their email confirmation, but they would get, in the way that we built it anyway, a second email saying, welcome to hotel loyalty program. You've been allocated 100 tokens for your $100 purchase. So to activate your digital wallet so you can access these tokens, please click here. And that basically takes the customer to their digital wallet, again, a native Web2 experience where their tokens are stored. They add a PIN to their email and they create their account. And that Web2 customer is now a Web3 customer. And you know, at the moment, there are about just over 4 million DeFi users with about $100 billion stored in these protocols. And you know, if a travel brand can start to convert their customers in this simple manner, travel could be, you know, one of the first major industries to have mass market Web3, you know, adoption because of the volume of customers and daily transactions. broader crypto adoption is tracking internet adoption with just over 100 million users at the moment. So we're at sort of 1998 levels in terms of adoption cycle. So it's very exciting. And hotels are a really good example, as they can use a token-based loyalty scheme as an incentive for consumers to book directly with them instead of through, like, say, an OTA, for example, and that would increase their margins.
Okay, wow, there's a lot to unpack there. So let me just ask some follow-up questions. So from the consumer standpoint, let's look at it from that first.
Yeah.
So a hotel company is using this. What would be some of the benefits then for me as a consumer using this system?
Yes, so similar to what on the consumer side, we think the benefits are pretty obvious. Interoperability, transferability, tokens that don't expire and can increase in value, an automated earning and redemption process. And from a brand point of view, our experience with Coras obviously is seeing different product categories like hotels, car hire, aggregated into a single API. So in travel, where the same products are available across multiple different websites, a token-based loyalty program gives customers reason to buy from them. And then there's also the benefit of automated earning and redemption. And brands as token holders, they benefit from the increase in token value. And there's also a transaction fee for converting one token to another, which is shared pro rata amongst the token holders. So the brand typically at the start certainly will have the biggest, will be the biggest token holder. So they'll have a new revenue stream that isn't available to them at the moment.
Okay. And as far as that piece around interoperability and transferability and all that, so for me as the traveler, then I could be earning tokens, let's say through hotel brand X, and potentially use them to book a room at hotel brand Y. I mean, is that potentially?
Yeah, like it's even more, I suppose, exciting than that. You could be earning, let's say, tokens through your local, like, say, supermarket, and you can convert those tokens into the hotel token. Because these tokens are basically tradable and they're freely exchangeable, it puts all the sort of the power back into the consumer, going, like, if you think of the amount of loyalty programs you would sign up for historically, and then you don't have enough points then to then spend, you haven't got enough points to spend it on anything, and then they just sit sort of there essentially unused. Where now what you'll be able to do is go, actually, I'll convert those into a program that I have a loyalty system that I am using. So it's just a completely different, situation for the customer.
And so what does that potentially mean for the brand? I mean, certainly there's a giving up of some control there on the part of brands that would use this, correct?
Yeah, like, I think, like, if we're realistic, we don't think that, the biggest loyalty schemes are going to move from a centralized system to a decentralized system overnight. But what we do think is possible is that they might say, for example, run it for a particular product. So obviously our pitch is from Coras is to be able to say, well, events and activities, $200 billion industry, we've obviously connected the Coras API product to the FIDA product. So if you want to have essentially a new ancillary revenue stream with the DeFi loyalty product attached, that's available to you, sort of from day one. And that might be an entry point from that point of view. But we think obviously there's lots of brands that don't have loyalty schemes because they are capital intensive to run, or they're just not that interesting to the customer. It's like, if you buy a product from us, you can then buy more products from us. People are buying products from all across the web. So a loyalty scheme needs to reflect what consumer behavior is. And it doesn't really do that at the moment.
So talk a bit about how do you start to get adoption of this concept, and where could some of the challenges come in? Yeah,
sure. So existing, established loyalty brands, loyalty schemes, they do make a lot of money for some brands. In the US, especially, banks are paying brands, billions of dollars annually so their customers can earn points based on their credit card spend. So as I mentioned, it will be difficult to move those brands. So, but I said they might try it, run them side by side. But, we think the initial adopters will probably be brands that don't have an existing loyalty program, if we're being honest. But that's okay. But I think that the consumer experience is going to be so much better under a decentralized loyalty program than it is under a centralized one. It's the same way, like, if you look at, like, my background was, like, sort of coming from music, and if you look at the shift of, say, from where the power lay with say record shops, and then the power went direct to consumer. It's a change in technology that empowers the consumer. And I think, so we think if you're operating a centralized loyalty program and your competitor is operating a decentralized one, the comparison will become pretty big quite quickly, we think.
Yeah, that's interesting. And so for, let's say, potentially a company, a brand that doesn't currently have a loyalty scheme, you're saying they might be some of the early adopters. Talk us through a bit about how do you create this, like on the technical side of it and the back end side of it? How is that what you would do then? Or how would a brand start living in this world of a DeFi loyalty program?
Yeah, so because it's still like DeFi is a relatively new product and blockchain is still a relatively new product, we're aware of the fact that, having something to show a customer or a brand and go, this is how it's going to work, is really, really important. So what we're doing basically is we're going to launch our own loyalty token in the new year, which we're calling FIDA. And the idea is it will act as a showcase for brands on how the whole end-to-end consumer experience will work. And as I mentioned, we've connected FIDA to the Coras API, so you have the sort of combined Web 2 and Web 3 products sort of together. And then we'll also, we'll also be partnering with brands who might want to say, even have it even further distance away, and we'll issue FIDA tokens for maybe a product that they're operating. But to get up and running essentially is that the same infrastructure that will be behind FIDA token will be the same infrastructure behind any partner token. So we can essentially mint, a partner comes to us and says, we'd like to have a loyalty scheme. They decide the tokenomics, what the earning rate per customer is, and also what the allocations are. And then essentially we'll mint that token and then it will be available. So it will be quite a straightforward process. The piece that we will have to build next year is having an API that then those brands can obviously, because obviously it's great that it connects to Coras, but if those brands want to connect it to one of their own e-commerce products, whatever it is, and we'll have an API that will enable that to happen. But that's sort of our MVP is more sort of just showing how it works in our existing ecosystem, so to speak.
Okay, what are you hearing as you're talking to brands and companies? And of course, specifically, I'd be curious if anyone in the travel space. I mean, what is your sense of interest and willingness to take this on?
I think there's a combination of things. I think there's a combination of sort of intrigue and fear in terms of, fear of something new, in terms of how is this going to work, how is this going to impact us. And, obviously there's been a lot of it's probably been the biggest year in terms of consumer adoption for crypto as a whole. And that can only be a good thing. And I think that there's definitely from some of the, we're obviously trying to talk to people who have an expertise in loyalty. And, for some of the people we've been speaking to, they definitely think there's an opportunity here in terms of, with their experience within the loyalty industry. So I think that there's a lot of people going, like, listen, with any new technology, no one wants to be first and no one wants to be last. So we think from our point of view, we'll have a product up and running. We're in ongoing discussions with a number of partners at the moment. So we'll have a few initial partners live, and then that just creates confidence that it's like, oh yeah, this is okay. This is, as I said, the key thing is almost like it's just a better version of an existing product. And the fact that it's using in the same way that, people don't say I'm using the internet to buy something. You're just going like, I'm buying a product online, because and the technology behind it doesn't really matter. And we think that's a shift that's going to happen. So we think that, yeah, there's definitely an appetite for brands to have their own, to get involved in blockchain, get involved in DeFi. But also, like, there is an education process. Like I've spent pretty much the whole year trying to get my head around it. And there's a lot of concepts and a lot of different terminology and stuff like that. So, we think we've got a good experience of working with bigger brands and bringing new technology to them. And so, yeah, so it's just an education process for both the partner and the brands involved. And that's where we think some of our strengths will be.
Okay, and just briefly before we wrap up here, last few seconds, give me a sense, how confident are you that this is going to take hold? And just a guess on the timeline. Are we talking 3 years, 5 years, 10 years? What's your outlook?
Well, I'm very confident in terms of the core technology behind it. Like, as I said, that figure earlier on about 4 million users and $100 billion of value locked in.
Right.
You know, that kind of gives you an idea of what the scale is. The fact that it's tracking, you know, internet adoption pretty much, you know, if you look at the lines, they're basically identical. So you're sort of 1998 levels. But, you know, it's like, you know, if you think about it, like I remember trying to listen to like streaming a baseball game in like 1999, and it was a terrible experience through Real Player. And, you know, and then YouTube launches 4 years later. So, you know, the technology can move pretty quickly. And so I wouldn't like to make any guesses in terms of how long this will take, but from a, you know, like to me, like at a high level, is loyalty a great consumer experience at the moment? No. Does this technology facilitate a better consumer experience? Yes. So like I said, it's really just sort of filling the gaps between getting from where we are now to there.
Yeah. It'll sounds to me as though if it happens the way you're describing, it'll be one of those things that we look back at some point and go, this was so obvious, kind of. So,
well, you know, I spend most of my time going, is this as obvious as we think it is? And, you know, so that's why, you know, we want to speak to as many potential partners as possible and go, well, actually, here's the reality on the ground of how our loyalty program works. And, you know, how do we get around this? Because for us, then that gives us the roadmap of what we need to build as well.
yeah. All right. Wonderful. Well, we are out of time. Certainly we'll be following to see as this develops. So Mark, thank you so much.
Thanks very much, Mitra. Have a good day.
Bye-bye.